Okay guys, welcome to another episode of Off-Road Ramble. We have two vehicles which don't necessarily always go together, a Ford Bronco and an INEOS Grenadier. We're going to compare them as much as we can. I don't think this is going to be entirely scientific, but we've got access to both vehicles. Pretty cool location. We're about 50 miles in the West Desert from Salt Lake City. We're very lucky here to have this ground to check out. So yeah, we're going to compare these vehicles. There are surprisingly some similarities between them. So yeah, let's get into it. So guys, we've got the INEOS Grenadier. If you watch some of our other videos, you'll realise this is affectionately known as Mushy. So this is a pre-production prototype that's loaned to us from the company. We use this a lot, so it's used for all sorts of things that we do. Events and just general as a runaround vehicle. It's quite affectionately referred to as everybody by Mushy because of the magic mushroom colour. But anyway, the more specific stuff on this is a INEOS Grenadier Trial Master. So it has the BF Goodrich tyres, it has the raised air intake, it has the lock-in front and rear differentials. It is entirely, other than a few scratches here and there, is entirely stock. It's very reliable vehicle. It's particularly awesome, either because we're emotionally attached to it, but in its own right, it's pretty good. So here we have a 2024 Ford Bronco. This particular one is a wild track. Now, to put that into spec, and again, we're not really comparing apples to apples here at all. Now, we've got access to both of these, and we thought, well, we'll do a bit of a comparison. Now, I personally have spent a lot of time in both of these, in a sort of training capacity and just using them on events and things. So I'm used to them a lot. And there is actually quite a bit that you can compare to these. So I'll give you, before we start digging into the individual specs, we'll give you an overview. Now, the individual specs of these, again, there's some similarities, but both of these vehicles sit on a body on frame. Now, as we get further and further down into time, less vehicles are available with a body on frame. Now, that could be a good thing or a bad thing to you, but if you're into these sorts of vehicles, you probably want a body on frame. For strength, rigidity, off-road prowess and all of that sort of stuff. So the Bronco has a box section steel chassis. It's referred to as the T6 chassis, which is just an internal name, but it's very similar to the Ford Ranger. It's like a heavily modified version of the Ford Ranger chassis. There's also a vehicle, if you're watching this from out of the US, called an Everest, which is basically an SUV version of the Ranger. So those three vehicles share the frame. But it is a box section frame, same as the Grenadier. That is a box section frame. Both vehicles, in this spec at least, this is a wild track. So this comes with a 2.7 litre V6 engine, twin turbo, very similar to the Grenadier. The Grenadier is an inline six rather than a V, but again, that is a twin turbo. So some similarities there. Both vehicles are designed, to be functional, and you can see by the shape. They're boxy, you can get stuff inside them. They're utilising their space very, very well. The wheelbase, ironically, is actually identical, 115 inches. They're both the same. Now, when we are going to compare these things, there's a little bit of a difference. We're running the standard tyres on the Grenadier. This, being the Wild Track, is fitted with the Sasquatch package. So what that basically means is it's got a slight lift. It's got 35-inch tyres from the factory. Gear ratio is a little bit different. So again, this is going to have slightly more ground clearance than a stock Grenadier. Now, if we had a Grenadier on 35s, that would probably be a little bit more of an accurate comparison, but it is what it is. So yeah, there are quite a few similarities between these vehicles. They're both very, very capable. I've driven both of them off-road, mostly in rocks, in places like Moab, and they both do very, very, very well. They're both very user-friendly. The functionality of using is different, but it's yeah, they are very, very easy to use vehicles, and they're both easy to live with. But again, a lot of the differences on this are really going to be down to personal preference, what you prefer. Now, for example, the Grenadier has the center screen. Now, when I first saw that on the Grenadier, I was like, oh, I'm not sure I'm going to get used to that. But actually, for those of you who do drive a Grenadier, you'll realize that, yeah, it actually works really nice. And then the fact that you've got more visibility because the screen, I think is a benefit. Now, with the Bronco, it's nice and flat across the top, so I don't think it's necessarily an issue with that. But it's just different, right? It's just a different way of doing it. So I think, for me personally, it works either way, but it is just personal preference. Okay, guys, if I look cold, that's because I'm very cold. It's now snowing. So we're out here filming in the snow, so it's very, very cold. So some of the similarities with the Grenadier and the Bronco, they both have a metal bumper, and it's kind of a pretty robust bumper. Now, it's obviously an option. There are a couple of different options on here that you can have. And you can see the very nice recovery points on the front of the Bronco on here, and that's for a hard and a soft shackle. You can actually, I think, get lights in here, but there's so many options, it boggles the mind. Different grille colours as well. Now, the Grenadier also has a metal bumper, which is great from an off-road standpoint. I guess in this instance, I think the Grenadier trumps the Bronco a little bit, in that it's modular. So if we did damage this, either on-road or off-road, it's made in multiple pieces. So you could take that off, but I guess that's a minor thing, but it is probably worth mentioning. Now, going back to the engine, the more specifics of the powertrains on these, they're very, very similar in power outputs. Torque is a little bit different, and the nice thing about that is, I'm going to give it some context. So let's look at some of that. I wrote some stuff down here. I'm going to possibly remember all of this stuff, but Grenadier has 282 horsepower and Bronco has 330. Okay. Now, a lot of people just look at horsepower and go, oh, it's this, it's that, and that's all they think about. What they don't think about is the torque. And also where that torque comes in. Now, if you've driven both of these vehicles, I'd like to hear from you actually and see if you agree with me. But the Bronco, when you put your foot down, you do need to, it is very indicative of a gas engine. It gets up and goes. It's not slow at all, the 2.7, that is. But you have to kind of, get up there in the rev range a little bit. And I don't mean high revs, but you've got to put your foot in it. And it makes a nice noise as well. It's a V6, it makes a particularly nice noise. Now, there is some versions of these I've driven where it's got like this augmented sound inside. I'm not overly keen on that. I know a lot of people aren't, but now on the V6, I don't know why they do that, because the V6 sounds nice anyway. Now on the 2.3, I can understand why they would do that, because that doesn't kind of sound as nice as this. Again, that's very subjective, but that's worthy of mentioning. Now with the Grenadier, you think, well, if you've never driven one of these, by the way, you think, well, it's a car engine, it's just going to rev and rev and rev. Yes, it is essentially an engine that's used, they're using the X5 or the 3 Series or 5 Series, whatever, the B58 engine. But remember, it has been completely retuned by INEOS for this application. So the gas version of this drives like a diesel. So it pulls, and even though the torque is a little bit less, it pulls from low RPM very, very well. So you don't really have to get on it as much to make it go. So that's just the difference. Now, me being from Europe, I've driven lots of diesel vehicles, and if you've driven diesel vehicles, you know what I mean. But yes, this does drive like a diesel, where this, not so much. This is more like a higher revving car engine. And I don't think either of those things are a bad thing. They're both fun to drive. So in terms of drivetrain, that is a little bit different, I suppose. The Grenadier is a full-time four-wheel drive system, so it drives all 4 wheels all the time. There is no option to put it into, you know, front or rear-wheel drive or whatever. Well, I mean, why would you? But yeah, much better. So, you know, the idea that you're driving all 4 wheels, so that's much better on the road as well from a standpoint of handling. You know, you're preventing understeer and oversteer if that was, you know, you were ever going to come across that sort of thing. Now with the Bronco, it does have lock-in differentials. This particular one is the Wild Track, so we've got lock-in front rear differentials, same as the Grenadier. But if you start up, drive it away, it is literally just a part-time four-wheel drive system. So it just drives the rear wheels. Now it does have a 4 auto function, which really operates a clutch system. In this has the advanced transmission. There's 2. Or transfer case, I should say, but this one has the 4-wheel drive auto. So what that allows you to do is, if the rear wheels slip, it will send some power to the front wheels, basically via a clutch system, and it's very, very good. It has low range and high range, same as the Grenadier, and actually the ratios are very, very, very similar for the transfer case. I think on the Grenadier it's 2.5 to 1, and on the Bronco it's 2.72 to 1. So very, very similar in terms of, you know, and it's that magic sort of numbers that work for the vehicle, you know, in what it's going to be used for. So axle ratios, by the way, they're very similar as well. Grenadier uses 410s, Bronco uses 47s as well, and that's with the Sasquatch package, which changes that a little bit. As I said, wheelbase is identical, 115-inch wheelbase. Now the 2-door is 100 inches, which is still quite a big vehicle, but bear in mind that the very first Broncos, I think, were 92 inches, which is pretty small, really. But yeah, that was back in the 60s. That was a different time altogether. Weight on these, Grenadier weighs, and again it depends on spec, about 6,000 pounds, and again same for Bronco, you're talking 5,000 and a bit, but again depends on the spec. In terms of Grenadier, a little bit heavier, but that's probably due to the fact the way it's made. The Grenadier does not have a soft top on it at all. It's not built like that. Whereas the Bronco, whichever one you have, now this particular one is the hard top. So it uses sort of a modular section where you can take the front out, and it's really easy, very easy to do. You can take the middle bit out as well, or you can take the whole thing off completely. Now that's great from the point of view if you've never driven a convertible anything, and I'm not overly keen on convertible cars, although there is a lot to be said for driving a vehicle with the roof off. It completely transforms the driving experience in a positive way. So it is kind of nice to have the roof off. Now obviously we don't have that option on the Grenadier, Now you can get safari windows, which I think makes a huge difference of letting light through inside. But those two things, the way they translate into the driving dynamics, if you've driven both of these before, you'll know exactly what I mean. But let me give you some sort of idea how that works. So when you get in the Grenadier, it is absolutely rigid stiff. There is very little torsional movement, if anything. And you can hear that by when you shut the doors. It's very, very stiff. And from a handling perspective as well, one of the reasons that the Grenadier handles well, amongst other things, you know, suspension, etc., is the body rigidity is incredible on this thing. It has a huge amount of body rigidity and stiffness. Now with the Bronco, because of the way it's made, whether it's the hard top or the soft top, we don't have that body rigidity. Now you could argue, you could say, well, yeah, it's going to flex more off-road. Yeah, that's a valid argument as well. But whether we have the soft top or the hard top, yeah, you can tell when you drive it. Now, I have an engineering background, so maybe I'm going into the weeds a bit too much on this, but yeah, you can definitely feel that. I don't think it has a negative effect on the handling, it's just different. Now, the other thing with the Grenadier as well, on the Grenadier we have solid doors, you know, as in one piece. You know, obviously it's pretty conventional in that sense. Now with the Bronco, because they've prioritized, you know, taking the doors off is something you can do, which is very cool to do. When we you know, drop the glass, and this is one of the things they did when they were thinking about comparison to the Jeep, because this is what this vehicle was going to be a competitor for with the Wrangler. The idea was to have not this great big door, so that's why, or one of the reasons, you have frameless doors, so that when the glass is down, they're easier to store. You can put them in the back. But what you don't have is that rigidity around the glass. So, you know, you could argue that's a negative. I don't think so, because it gives you the ability to take the doors off. And I remember old Subarus and certain sports cars that had no frame around the and I think it's kind of cool. But yeah, and again, it depends, because we're not really comparing, you know, apples to apples. But yeah, just worthy of consideration if you're thinking about these. Now, one thing I didn't mention was price. This particular Grenadier, if you're going to buy it right now, obviously not these two because they're both used, but I'm talking new, you'd probably be in this for about $85,000 thereabout. And that's because this one has a Trialmaster package on. Now the base Grenadier, I've only seen a handful of those, I think lists for 71, 72. Now this out the door in 2024 was 68, I believe. 68, I think, because this has got the a Lux pack, I think they call it, on as well, and that's with all your bits and pieces out the door, fees and stuff. So it's still not, you know, not a cheap vehicle. So there's a little bit of a price difference in the two. But yeah, it gives you some idea, you know, from a comparison. Obviously, buying used, that would be very, very different. Now, as I said, this is the highest, or one of the highest spec. Now, this is obviously not including the Bronco Raptor. There's also a version called the Strop Edition, which was a racing, so a nod to a vehicle that was used in racing. But this is the Wild Track, so this is focused more on fast off-road. So this one comes with the Fox shock absorbers. The other versions have variations of a Bilstein setup. This has the Fox shock absorbers for going a little bit quicker off-road, and that's why it has the Wild Track name. Now, very, very similar to this is a version called the Badlands. There's a little bit of a price difference in it, but I think it's almost the same. The big difference with that is that has different dampers, and it also has a disconnectable stay bar, which this one doesn't have, the Wildtrak. Now, having said that, the Wildtrak, I believe the Wildtrak does have a slightly different stay bar diameter than you know, any other Bronco, to allow it to articulate, you know, over different terrain. So there's different things for, you know, different strokes for different folks, so to speak. So let's push on with some more of the detail. In terms of the differentials, that both locking front and rear differentials, electronic differentials, really nice to use on the Bronco. We've got buttons on the top now. Obviously on a Grenadier we have buttons on the roof, so you know, they're just in different places. Again, different ways of doing the same thing. Now with the Bronco you can use, it does have goat modes on it, where you can select a driving mode. Now we just have an off-road mode on the Grenadier, but if you wanted to drive the Grenadier in a very analog fashion, do everything yourself, you can absolutely do that if you want to. But again, they're trying to appeal probably to a slightly wider demographic. So angles, let's think about angles. Now again, this is not the best comparison, but we'll talk about it anyway. And the reason that the angles are slightly better on the Bronco with these specific vehicles is, of course, this is on 35-inch tyres, and we've got the standard tyres on here, which I think are almost 33s. So you know, not really a valid comparison, but still both vehicles are very, very good. Now the Bronco has its approach angle on the front here, and just to give you some, and again, just some context to this, the approach angle is this angle here. Okay, and that's basically the angle you're going to utilize until you hit something, and that is actually 43 degrees, which is very, very, very good. Now on this particular Grenadier it's 36. Now if I put 35-inch tyres on it, I suspect it would be in that ballpark. So again, we're not really comparing like with like, but it does give you a good idea. Now the ramp angle is almost not worth talking about because they're the same wheelbase. The Bronco is 26 and the Grenadier is 28, but again, you know, little bit different heights, but the wheelbase is the same, so that's probably why that's very, very similar. Now departure angle, a little bit not that much difference. The Bronco is 37 and the Grenadier is 36 again. I thought 36.1. So yeah, Grenadier is actually pretty cool because it has the same departure and approach angle, and again that angle is here like that. So it's basically the angle that you would have before you touch something. Now a lot of people like to go on about approach and departure angles, but really it's a bit academic. I mean, it's great for a comparison what we're doing now, but nobody drives up to a rock and goes, oh, it's 37 degrees and I've only got 36 degrees. Really, that's nobody takes a protractor up to this stuff, or if you, I don't know, maybe you do. Ground clearance, again, very similar, but for a stock Grenadier, it's 10.4 inches. On the Bronco, specifically on this one, is 11.5 inches. So again, if we put some 35-inch tyres on the Grenadier, it would be much more even. So again, we're not really comparing like with like. Waterfording as well. On the Bronco it does 33 inches, and this is the recommended 33 inches, and then the waterfording for the Grenadier is 31.5 inches. So, you know, very, 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 very similar. So guys, a bit more about the suspension on these. They are both a 5-link setup, so that means there are 5 points of contact holding the axle Now I say axle and axles as in plural. The Bronco has an axle on the back and it has independent suspension on the front. The Grenadier has an axle on the front and an axle on the back, so a little bit different. But there is a 5-link setup on both of them, and if you look on the side, you can see the lower radius arm sticking out there. And when we go off-road, one of the first places that catches on a Bronco, if you're not being careful or watching where you're going, is this radius arm bracket. Now you can see on this wild track it has a reinforced piece as well, which is quite nice, so nice and robust. Grenadier, I think the frame is a little bit more, or seems to be a little bit more robust in places. And obviously with the Grenadier, it's wax injected and it's powder coated and e-coated from the factory, so that would be worthy of mentioning. Now obviously this has got a 5-link setup on the back, but also it's also got a 5-link setup on the front, and that's one of the reasons that the Grenadier drives so nicely for a vehicle on axles, is that 5-link setup with 2 radius arms and a track bar, or a panhard rod, depending on what you want to call it, really stops the axle from moving left to right, or any of those radius arms flexing, and that would translate into the vehicle as you feeling the steering wheel being pulled like it would be on some older stuff. Now obviously with independent suspension you don't get any of that. The double wishbone setup on the front, and it uses the alloy arms on there, nice and light, there's cast alloy arms, so it just gives you a different ride. Now I've driven both of these extensively, and I don't think one's better than the other in terms of ride, but I have a very soft spot for both of them. But the general idea, I think, for most people is that independent suspension rides a bit better over bumps because you're isolating one wheel from the other, but it gives you less wheel articulation when you're off-road. And as we all know, the way that an axle works is when you force one wheel up, there's an equal and opposite reaction on the other side which pushes that wheel down, so you've always got 2 wheels on the ground. Whereas with independent front suspension, or all-round independent suspension, if that's what you've got, you don't get that wheel articulation because the wheels aren't joined together. So it is very much a 6 of one and half a dozen of the other, but just worthy of mentioning the differences. So guys, inside as a comparison, I think whoever designed the interior of this did an absolutely stellar job. It's kind of a little bit industrial here. Lots, especially on this particular one, this has got a heated wheel and so on and so forth, so it's got some nice options on it, but they've done a really good job of not making it too bougie inside and making it very functional and easy to use. Things like these differential lock buttons over here, our dial down here, actual physical controls down here for the heater. There is quite a bit of functionality on this screen and on the screen in front of us, but I think from a user perspective it's actually a really nice place to be and to use. Okay guys, you can see on the steering wheel here we've got this particular one is a slightly higher spec. It's got the lane departure warning, and you've got your adaptive cruise control buttons, but they all use the same steering wheel. But again, yeah, it's a very nice job. Now the dashboard on this one, if we just start it up, now this is a 2024, so I don't think they do this dash anymore. It's got the Ford family dash on here that's very similar to the F-Series trucks. So you can see in here, we've currently got it set on the off-road, which is really nice. We've got the pitch and roll angle, we've got wheel angle, tire pressures, and you can configure this. If you're thinking about buying one of these used, you can completely configure that all out. So that's very, very nice. This one's got the big 12-inch screen. I think on 2024 you could get the 8-inch screen. but now they all come with this 12-inch screen, which is very, very good from for seeing your maps and your music. So that's kind of nice. So guys, interior of the Grenadier, there's a reason it looks like an aeroplane inside, because, well, airplanes are functional, yeah, and that's really what they've tried to capture in here with all the buttons. This being a Trial Master, doesn't have the heated seats on here, which is what these spaces are for, but everything is pretty much done by buttons. And you can see you've got all our buttons on the roof as well. Differential locks, we've got pre-wired switches, so I've got pre-wired switches on the Bronco as well. Big difference in here, I suppose, if we're comparing the two, is where the screen is. There's slightly less functionality on here on the screen because it's all done with buttons, but the screen is in the middle, essentially. Now, if you've never driven a Grenadier and you think, well, I don't like that at all, that's kind of weird, you do get used to it. And actually, now that I've driven it, I actually prefer it. It makes perfect sense. And I think the upside is having more visibility on this side. As we look down on, I can physically see the fender on the front, so visibility is a bit better. Now, the other thing worth mentioning as well, which is really good, I'm just going to shut this door, is this flat area here where you can put your arm. I personally like that. That's pretty good. A nice low glass, and then on the Bronco it's the same. The visibility is very, very good, but you don't have this, so that's probably worthy of noting. And again, it depends how important both of those things, but I think key differences are the door panel and the center screen. This particular one, because this is a Trial Master, comes with these Recaro seats, which are cloth, so you can wipe it out. Now, whether you have the leather trim on this, they're also Recaro seats. It's just the material that's different. But yeah, quite a nice sort of utilitarian feel. Now, the other thing that we forget, the Bronco is really just sold in the US. The Grenadier is an international vehicle, but it's primarily sold in European countries. They sell it in Australia as well. But they actually, the Scottish Mountain Rescue use these things. I've seen them as in the French Fire Service. I think they're using them in Switzerland as work vehicles. So there's a bit more of an emphasis on utility with these vehicles, which, we're not going to be doing that in the US. But that gives you some idea about, the whole aesthetic and feel of this vehicle. Okay guys, what we're going to do, we're going to come through here in this little ditch crossing. We're going to run the Grenadier and the Bronco through to see how they cope with this. We're going to set them up as same as we can. They're both aired down, by the way, to about 18-20 psi. And we're not comparing true like to like, but there are some similarities. I'm going to leave it in drive. The Grenadier always pulls away in second gear in drive, as does the Bronco, so that's the same as well. I have the center differential locked, which is the same as having the Bronco in ultimately in in four-wheel drive, or in low range four-wheel drive, because the drivetrains are a little bit different. We're crossing this diagonally so that you concentrate one wheel at a time on the obstacle. So it's a bit like an animal, really. When it crosses a four-legged animal, you're doing one leg at a time. Same idea, if you want to use that analogy. So that's what I'm going to do. There's also a temptation when we come through here to do a bunch of steering, or let the truck steer you. So the idea is to keep the wheel in the direction that you're going. I'm going as slow as I can. I'm maintaining some momentum, because momentum is definitely a key here, especially where grip is compromised. So I'll try and keep the same momentum. We will lock the rear differential here, trying to be proactive. In other words, before the vehicle spins. And you can see the Grenadier just pulls through, and I'm doing 2 miles an hour. A little bit of, well, not a little, a lot actually, of tumbleweed here, but you can see it goes through there kind of nicely. We're not overly compressing the suspension, but yeah, it goes through pretty nice, pretty effortlessly really. And remember, this is on much smaller tyres than the Bronco. So there you go, that's how that goes through. So let's do it with the Bronco now, and I suspect it's going to be pretty similar experience, so let's see how it does. Okay guys, we're in the Bronco, similar setup. I'm going to leave it in drive. I've got it in four-wheel drive low. I am going to lock the differential the rear differential that is, prior to going through here, because I know the terrain is going to be where there's lots of articulation. It's a little bit loose in places, but not too bad. But the same thing applies to driving this. I'm going to keep the wheel nice and straight. If I've got to do any manoeuvring, I'll try and do that up here on the flat. We'll go through it diagonally. I guess this angle is probably about 30 degrees, I'm going to say, if you took the gully as a 0. So we're going to come through. So very similar, or as similar as we can be. Now I suspect you can see there's a couple of places outside. I can see where the Grenadier just touched underneath. And I suspect if the Bronco does touch it, it's not going to be as much, just because of there's a little bit more clearance that this one has. See the parking sensors are coming on now, keeping the wheel nice and straight, watching out for that departure angle, and then yep, up it goes, no problem at all. So yeah, very similar as predicted, but yeah, both vehicles do, you know, exceptionally well. Okay guys, there you go. We've done a little bit with these, as much as we can do today. So I hope that was, if you were thinking about, either you were considering this, the INEOS, and you were thinking about that, or the other way around, it gives you a bit more clarity of judgment in terms of seeing what they're doing. We focused a little bit more on some of the detail and a little bit of off-road, or certainly from the standpoint of driving off-road. Obviously there's lots more to these vehicles, you know, throwing kids in, throwing dogs in, towing. There's a whole bunch of things that you could look at. So we've focused it in one particular area, but I hope that helps. We've had fun doing this, but they're both excellent vehicles, and if you like driving off-road and you like this type of vehicle, I don't think you'll go wrong with either of these. I think they're both they're excellent. They just do it in slightly different ways. If you'd like to like and subscribe, if there's anything you'd like to know, or any vehicle you'd like us to try and focus on, if you've got any questions, please get in touch. We'd like to hear from you. Any comments you want to make, that would be great. All right, well, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.